Today I'm talking to an old friend, and a friendly face at that. Julia Campbell, you have been such a big part of Nonprofit Hub, such a huge part of Cause Camp. You really are a friendly face to our audience.
Thank you.
But we're growing all the time. So for those who don't know you, give us a little background. Tell us what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm Julia Campbell. I come from the nonprofit sector. I've been a development director, marketing director, and at one point I was a development, marketing, and volunteer director all at once. So, kind of three full-time jobs. So, I've worked with small, really small, tiny community based organizations all the way to Boston University and larger national organizations and universities. So, I pretty much run the gamut. And right now, I do digital strategy for nonprofits around either awareness campaigns, fundraising campaigns, increasing visibility, and helping them really build a community using the power of digital tools.
Very good. And you're doing more than that. You have a pretty incredible new podcast that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So I love that you have that really broad spectrum background. And it actually, when I thought was trying to think of a subject for us today, that's one of the things I love how diplomatic you are. Like you tend to see things from multiple angles and take a real well rounded view of things. And I had a situation recently where a company I was talking to was talking about how they only work with enterprise level nonprofits. And I'm going to be honest, at first I was like, what do you mean by enterprise level? Like, I've heard that in the for profit sector. I've not heard it a ton with those who are doing cause work. And they went ahead and they clarified it for me and put some dollar signs around it, which kind of took my breath away. And I was left wondering, like, how do we get to this point that like we're measuring nonprofits by their size? Is that the best measurement? Like, what are we doing when we're quantifying things that way?
I definitely don't think it's the best way to measure nonprofits. And I was sharing the statistic with you earlier. 92% of nonprofits worldwide have budgets of less than $1 million. And I would really be willing to bet that it's maybe 50% have budgets of less than $500,000. I mean, really, the vast majority of people doing this work are either doing it out of their house or they have maybe two, three employees. They don't have a lot of capacity and a lot of resources. And that's not to say they can't grow, but for some organizations, there's really no reason for them to grow really largely. So I think of a lot of my clients, for whatever reason, the rare disease community has kind of gravitated towards me. And I work with a lot of really rare and I don't want to say niche, I guess rare disease nonprofits. One is like the Marfan Syndrome Foundation and the Dravet Syndrome Foundation. And they are not going to ever have budgets of $500 million because they're dealing with less than 1% of the population, or they're dealing with, 1 to 10% of the population. And it's not their goal to raise tens of millions of dollars and it is their goal to reach as many people as they can nationally and to fund research, but it is not a common disease that's definitely going to be a household name, something like cancer. So for me, I think that growth is hugely important if that is one of your goals. But if you are the little food bank, I think the little food bank down the street here that really serves my community of 4,000 people, they're not going to have a budget of $500 million. And why would they want that? They're very, very niched down, serving this specific community, really drilling down and understanding who we are, what we need, what's going on, connecting with people. And it's just not their mission to grow to be an enterprise level nonprofit. Certainly, if you have an organization and that is your goal, and that's something that you are striving towards, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but I don't think that small nonprofits should be comparing themselves to like the Charity Waters and the American Cancer Societies, because it's just serving a much different, array of people.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have to throw this in here because I'm wondering it in my mind and I want to bounce it off of you.
Mm-hmm.
So one of one of Bill McHenry's
Yeah.
stories is about a small community organization. I think they were dealing with hunger. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
Um, it was in Florida, and he's speaking at this conference, and this person raises their hand and says, "Well, I don't need to raise any more money. My board thinks that we're fully funded." And his response was, "Have you fed everybody in your county?" And she's like, "Yeah, we're getting there. We're fulfilling our mission." And he says, "Well, have you fed everybody in the neighboring county?" "No." "Have you fed everybody in the state?" "No."
Mhm.
"Have you fed everybody in the nation?" "Obviously, no." So when you get to the point that you are raising adequate support to carry out your mission, which there are organizations, I mean, I know we kind of have scarcity mindset, but there are organizations that raise too much.
Mhm.
Where do you stop? When you've
Well,
achieved
yeah.
that, should you go further?
That's where collaboration comes in. So I believe so strongly in creating coalitions of organizations that are doing similar things. So all of the food pantries in Massachusetts have a coalition. And I believe that if that was the case in one particular food pantry, I know that when they get too many donations, they share it with other counties. So I live in a very upper middle class community, and I know that our food pantry got something like 100 turkeys donated last year. And there's just not, they couldn't they store them. They didn't have the capacity. They didn't have enough people that wanted them. So they gave them to other neighboring communities. So that's really the spirit. It's not like you're going to throw away these turkeys. You're going to really give them to people that need them if you're going to continue your mission. So I think with things like, especially with something like a shelter or an after school program that might be full in one town, but referring people to another town, it's almost like climate change. I mean, if you're just solving climate change in your one little area, guess what? We all breathe the same oxygen. Like we all drive to other places. We don't just live in a bubble with like a little, tent over it. So I really believe in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. And I think that if you are doing such a fantastic job, certainly reap the benefits, focus on your community, figure out what else you could be doing, but also see if there's other organizations that might benefit from your efforts. Or if you have too many clothing donations, if you have too many people wanting to do fundraisers for you. This actually happened in our community during COVID. A local hospital, they had tons of people that wanted to do fundraisers for them. And they said, there are lots of other organizations that actually really need the help. And they worked with the United Way to help identify, in the chamber to help identify some organizations that well-meaning people who wanted to raise money could support. So I just really believe in that spirit of community and collaboration.
That is beautiful. That makes me want to go to Massachusetts. I
Yeah,
wish.
I don't think it's like that everywhere. And I don't think every nonprofit is like that. Some of them want their little piece of the pie. But what I've seen here is that spirit, and I'm here for it.
Absolutely. I love that. Talk about a rising tide movement. No,
Yes.
I don't think every nonprofit is like
Yeah.
that, though. And I definitely don't think every community is, but maybe they'll listen to this and they'll get a clue. Um, okay, so when I brought up the enterprise thing, one of the things that bothered me about that conversation was it was about new technology. And because this company was only targeting the biggest of the big, the smaller nonprofits aren't going to benefit from it. But you specialize in growth and marketing and social media tools. What can these smaller organizations do to kind of stake their claim when they're competing with
Mhm.
enterprise level nonprofits?
The small nonprofits that I work with, I really believe actually have an advantage, because I do think that I know that trust in institutions is down. So I read the Edelman Trust Barometer every year, and it monitors the United States Americans' trust in institutions, brands, companies, nonprofits. And what they found in 2021 was that 50, this is like shocking to me, 50% of Americans do not trust nonprofits to do the right thing. Now, I know that's not the little food bank down the street. I know they're talking about the big news stories we've heard about overhead and things like that. So in my mind, I actually think the small nonprofit kind of has a leg up here because they can say, look, we're not like the big guys. Not that the big guys are bad, but they can say, every dollar you give us goes right back in the community. You can come and take a tour and see the results of your impact. You can come and have an event. You can come and talk to the executive director. There's less bureaucracy and red tape around accessibility and what they can share and the stories that they can tell. And they're a little bit more agile. So small nonprofits, I mean, I'm thinking of one of my favorites is Amira Incorporated. They have a budget of $2 million or less. I mean, I think they're under 2 million. And I'm trying to get their mission correctly. I don't want to say save. They don't say save. They rehabilitate people that have been sexually exploited. So people that have either been sex trafficked or they work with sexual assault survivors and other assault survivors. And they have such a passionate following because they are so open and honest. Their executive director does Facebook Lives all the time. They're constantly telling great stories. They never share names and details of their clients, but they're constantly, the development director is always out there talking. So there are ways that you can really build this community and this connection. And I actually think you don't have to go through 20,000 people to do a Facebook Live. Can you imagine doing a Facebook Live at I'm just thinking of like a big national organization? You probably have to check 90 boxes, go through, fill out 10,000 forms. Like there's 20 people that want to have their hands in the pie. But if you're an executive director at a small nonprofit, you can just go live. You can go live, tell me what's going on. You can call people whenever you want. You can send a thank you note. I think there's a lot more opportunity for that personal connection with small nonprofits, but they just need to understand, they need to take their power and they need to understand their power.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it, folks. Just go live.
Go
We are
live.
gonna we are gonna come off of live stream on that note. So watch for Julia's episode when it airs in